Peter followed him at a distance to the high priest's courtyard, and he went in and sat with the servants to see the end. Now Peter sat outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him.
You also were with Jesus of Galilee.
But he denied it before them all.
I do not know what you are saying.
And when he had gone out to the gateway, another girl saw him and said to those who were there,
This fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth.
But again he denied with an oath.
I do not know the man.
And a little later those who stood by came up and said to Peter,
Surely you also are one of them, for your speech betrays you.
Then he began to curse and swear.
I do not know the man.
And Peter remembered the word of Jesus.
Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
So he went out and wept bitterly.
But Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. And he sat with the servants and warmed himself at the fire. Now as Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came. And when she saw Peter warming himself, she looked at him and said,
You also were with Jesus of Nazareth.
I neither know nor understand what you are saying.
And he went out on the porch, and a rooster crowed. And the servant girl saw him again, and began to say to those who stood by,
This is one of them.
But he denied it again. And a little later, those who stood by said to Peter again,
Surely you are one of them, for you are a Galilean and your speech shows it.
Then he began to curse and swear.
I do not know this man of whom you speak.
A second time, the rooster crowed. Then Peter called to mind the word that Jesus had said to him.
Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.
And when he thought about it, he wept.
Having arrested him, they led him and brought him into the high priest's house. But Peter followed at a distance. Now when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. And a certain servant girl, seeing him as he sat by the fire, looked intently at him.
This man was also with him.
Woman, I do not know him.
And after a little while, another saw him.
You also are of them.
Man, I am not.
Then after about an hour had passed, another confidently affirmed,
Surely this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean.
Man, I do not know what you are saying.
Immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him,
Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
So Peter went out and wept bitterly.
And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Now that disciple was known to the high priest, and went with Jesus into the courtyard of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door outside. Then the other disciple, who was known to the high priest, went out and spoke to her who kept the door, and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who kept the door said to Peter,
You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?
I am not.
Now the servants and officers who had made a fire of coals stood there, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. Now Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Therefore they said to him,
You are not also one of his disciples, are you?
He denied it.
I am not.
One of the servants of the high priest, a relative of him whose ear Peter cut off, said,
Did I not see you in the garden with him?
No, I do not know him.